exploring habits of the heart, leadership lessons from survival to significance. We will have a question and answer session at the end of the talk, and I encourage you to submit any questions you may have in the chat box that will be responded to after the talk. Mr. Krish, I welcome you.
Well, thanks a lot, Sharon. I appreciate the kind words, and I would like to add that when you hear your resume and all of the other good things, most of you have heard me say this before, you kind of feel you're at your funeral and that all the good things have already been done. But we are in some very unprecedented times, and as a result, I want to take you through a small narrative called The Habits of the Heart. Books have been written about this. But I came up with a 4-point formula that we'll send to you when this session is over. So don't worry about PowerPoint. We're not going to worry about that. We'll send you a comprehensive PDF that includes all the components we'll talk about. I'm also going to put together a few things that we'll send to you that are additional data points that will help you. But as I was on my morning walk today, I was trying to think to myself, what can you tell people who are having a hard time comprehending discipline when most of the attributes around us are forced, which means there is uncertainty everywhere. There is doubt and anxiety everywhere. This has been since the beginning of time, and I'm going to give you the first habit. The first habit is to realize that the food you eat on the mountaintop only grows in the valley. Nothing grows on the mountaintop. So all of us are right now in the valley. We're in the valley of doubt, the valley of despondence, the valley of despair. And as a result of that, we are all wondering, what can we do that is unique? So the 4 principles that I want to give you are, first, we're going to talk about the celebration of our own foundation. So we have to look at what we have done so far that is good, that is clean, that is pure, that is noble. We are being barraged with information from all sides. So if you want to look at your foundation, the first habit I would encourage you to do is stop watching the news. They have accurately predicted everything that is miserable in this world 900 times over. If you listen to the daily news and you add up the number of people that should have died by now, it is the total population of the world times 20. They parade on misery. They succeed on making sure that there is fear. The only pandemic that is out there that is not real is a pandemic of ignorance. While there is a real pandemic and there is a real virus and it has its own deadliness to it, 98% of the people do get cured. Less than some percent of them do succumb to it. But what we are doing is, like everything else in success, we are focusing on the smaller attribute, the smaller number, the 0.05%. When if you go to the world update meter, it says 6 million cases now in the world, but 3.5 million have been healed with it, which means half the people who contracted it have gone back. 75% of the people who get it never go to a hospital. They're sent home. So why is the world so preoccupied with the small? This is since the beginning of time. It is nothing new. Humanity has always looked at motivation as something that is elusive instead of looking at it as something that is promising. We always focus on the lowest common denominator. Our education system focuses on the lowest common denominator. Everything focuses on the lowest common denominator. So look at your foundation and ask yourself, what is the joy of acknowledgement you can give yourself? Are you happy for your family? Are you happy for your own health? Are you happy for your relationships? Do you pick up the phone and call other people during doubt and encourage them? Many years ago, Hans Selye, the great stress specialist, said, gratitude is the healthiest of all human emotions. anger the most destructive. Right now, we may be angry because we're confined. We may be angry because we have to do with less. You know, when I came back from Albania, where I was stuck during the beginning of this pandemic, I noticed I had $400 bills in my wallet. A month and a half later, they were still there. You can't go out and buy anything. The money is still there. One tank of gas has lasted us. Is there a silver lining to this? Yeah, you've spent less because you've been able to buy less. Guess what else you learned during this time? There are a lot of things you can do without. You know, I remember the story of a preacher in the United States. He had a small country home, and every time people would come to his house, he would say, "You can stay upstairs because you're a preacher." So people would stay upstairs. And then he would say, "Everything in my house is going to be taken care of for you. At night, if you have any need, just come down and ask me, and I will tell you what you can do without." I will tell you what you can do without. So right now we're in that stage. We have figured out what we can do without. So the first habit on the foundation of celebration, acknowledgement, gratitude. Second, look at your own achievement. How far have you come? I know that a lot of people have lost jobs, and some people have actually put out that it's hard to be motivated when you have disease, when you have despair, when you have sickness. My bride has carried a chronic illness for the better part of 10 years. I know what it is like to live with someone who every day is a struggle. Whenever I take a trip, I know it's a struggle. Sometimes when I leave the house, I have to worry if she had another disease spell and fell down. This is real. But something you have to understand is how far have we come? Look at your acknowledgement foundations. Look at your achievement foundations. Don't look as to where you have not yet reached. Always look how far you have already come. And something miraculous will begin to unseat itself, because just look at your television. Look at the pictures of people in global despair. Ask yourself, when you look from your balcony that you're confined to, you have a roof over your head, you have heat in your home, you have air conditioning if it's available, you have some amount of food, and then look at the broad array of people on the street who don't even have that luxury. My mentor, Zig Ziglar, always used to say, success should never be competition. Failure is competition. Success is completion. Always look at it in terms of what you've accomplished so far, and God will give you that innate ability to fight another day. The next thing on the foundation is, what skills can you amass during this time that will give you what is called the future of advancement? So acknowledgement, achievement, advancement. These are foundational things. One of the things, last night I got an email from somebody in the Philippines saying, "I've watched some of your programs. Are you doing something different this time around?" I am. Because this medium is now here to stay. I cannot be another person just getting on television or getting on a screen. I have to make sure that what I say sticks. So one thing we're doing now is, for every program we do, we have created an outline in advance that we send to the people. So if they watch it or not, at least they get the outline. Why am I doing that? It's called future skill attitude. You have to give people the skills that allow them to survive in a tomorrow that has not yet come, for a future they can't yet see. Some of you on this call and on this webinar know that I serve with a global ministry by the name of Ravi Zacharias Ministries. And we recently lost our founder. He was the most energetic, enthusiastic man I had ever met. I had a personal relationship with him spanning a good decade. His last words to me were from the hospital in Houston about 3 weeks before he passed. And I said, "When will this end?" He says something, his last message to me, and I took a screenshot of it so I don't lose. He says, "Maybe there is a reason there is a cloud in front of us to remind us of the light around us." The cloud in front of us, reminding us of the light around us. 7.85 billion people on planet Earth, many of them petrified and panicking. But you know, within the desire of humanity, there's only one you. Out of the 117 people on this particular webinar, of all the people, there's only one you. For those of you who asked a question, who will ask a question, for people like me, there's only one you, which is unique because even though our misery is universal, our existence is singular. Our misery may be universal, but our existence is singular. This heart was never designed for anything else except adoration. You know why at the foundation level we are struggling? Because this heart, as a circulatory muscle, can pump blood and give you oxygen and oxygenate your blood because of its circulatory powers and allow you to have breath. But this heart was designed, it will die if it does not adore. See, we have made it very easy to love. We have dates for it. We have Valentine's Day, we have Mother's Day, we have Christmas, we have anniversaries, we have birthdays. All of these dates are designed so that we can love. But we have failed miserably at the ability to allow yourself to be loved. You know, Cavett Robert, the great human engineer, once said, every night, 3 billion people go to bed hungry for food. But over 4.5 billion go to bed hungry for a word of encouragement. One that says you matter, you're special. If you already are there and you already have a good foundation, a good home, reach out. Emerson said, if you're going to pull me up, you better be on higher ground. So let's have a solid foundation. The next component I want to look at is the definition of clarification. So once you have the foundation, the celebration of that foundation, we have to clarify some habits. What are good habits? What are bad habits? Now, there are some habits which are more tradition. Get rid of them. Some of these traditions don't work. But there are some traditions that we have let go. For example, one tradition I let go because I came away to the West was I didn't talk to my parents as often as I should have. And then as I got older, it was guilt. By the time the guilt was really pacified in some way, we lost my mom. And then I decided, I'm going to develop a new habit. I'm going to do 2 things every day. I am going to talk to my father no matter where in the world I am, every morning for at least 15 minutes. And I'm going to try to make him laugh. I'm going to talk to him every day for 15 minutes and I'm going to try to make him laugh. Why is that important? Because if you do not take care of the young, you do not have camaraderie with the people who are the same age as you, and do you not give respect to the elderly. One president of the United States said, make sure you're doing it in equal, because at any given time in life, you've been every one of those stages. Your turn will come. And when I look at people in isolation right now, especially global confinement, one of the habits I have is clarification is I look at my phone and every day I ask myself, did I reach out to at least 5 people every day to make sure that someone just said they're not able to hear any audio, but I guess the rest of you are able to hear, so it may be a problem with their microphone. So, but ask yourself, are you reaching out to someone every day? Now, one of the habits that I have developed very early on, and this is clarification. In this day, I want you to realize something. Because we are all confined and we are all relegated to our devices, reduce your communication response time to under 6 hours if you want to emerge from this as a voice of reason. If you want to emerge from this as a voice of reason, one that can be looked up to, if you've historically waited a day in business or whatever, reduce your communication response time to under 6 hours. And the reason I say 6 is most days I sleep no more than 6. I go to bed around 9:30 or 10, but I'm up by 4 o'clock. And most of my friends are on this call right now. They will tell you the odds of me not responding to them in beyond 8 hours would be unheard of. They'll vouch for it. In fact, Tychicus is on this call. He calls, anytime he sends me, he says jet speed response. Like he's just jet speed response because he asks a question and it comes right back. Krishnam is on the call. He will tell you that. I'm not doing this to brag. I'm doing this to tell you that it was easy during this confinement because this habit I developed before the lockdown. Well, now we are in the lockdown or it'll be lifted and we've got marginal easing. Develop this as a habit. Reach out to loved ones. But every day, call 5 strangers in your phone, in your business Rolodex, in your personal Rolodex, and say, hey, nothing important. Just wanted to see how you were doing. By the time you go from A through Z or Z, you'll realize a month and a half has passed and you can do it all over again. Why is that important? In the digital world, they are now saying in a virtual world, anything you say 72 hours ago is forgotten. So if you reach back to someone 72 hours later, or you post the same thing on Facebook 72 hours later, people will think it's brand new information because they're being barraged. So reduce your time constraints, otherwise you're going to be irrelevant. You're going to become a spectator. If you want to be someone who is accepted, first, say yes to it based not on your ability, but on your availability. The other day in the Philippines, someone called and said, hey, Krish, we want you to speak at 3 o'clock afternoon our time. Philippines is 13 hours ahead of me. That's 2 a.m. my time. And they said, well, can you record it and send it? I said, no, I'll wake up at 2 and we'll do it live. They said, why would you do it? I said, let me clarify. Remember, clarification is a habit of the heart. I said, they're already going through a lot of change. If their normal time to meet is at 3 p.m. in the afternoon in Manila, I should not add another variable. Remember that. If you are adding variables that already are there, if people already have a problem and you're trying to provide a solution and you keep adding variables because they are based on convenience, you will never have competence. Variables based on convenience will never result in competence. I remember many years ago, I had the privilege of being on a program with Michael Phelps. Now, you talk about a person who had habits. Michael Phelps, undoubtedly the greatest Olympian ever. His record will never be rivaled. He medaled in 5 different Olympics, I think. But I remember after he won the 8 medals in Beijing, we were on a program together and they were interviewing him in California. And they asked him, what habits did you have to develop? He said, time management. And everybody said, well, that's obvious. You're a swimmer, and the last medal you won was by the difference of 1/100th of an inch or a second. So obviously it's time management. He said, no, I had to learn how to plan my day. From the age of 7, they threw me in a pool. And I had to swim 4 hours a day, 364 days a year, because they pinned the hopes of a nation on me. From the age of 7, every day I swam for 4 hours. Somewhere in there, I had to clarify, when am I going to be a kid? When am I going to be a teenager? When am I going to have some fun? While carrying the hopes of a world on him. So when you're in the definition stage, ask yourself, what are your clarification habits? Remember this, the formula is, how do you glow? Learn to give more than you're asked. The G stands for give more than you asked. The L stands for leave more than you take. The O stands for offer praise to everyone around you. And the W stands for understand when applause matters. See, there's a difference between praise and flattery. I don't believe my positive press. When people call and say, hey, I really like this about you, I don't pay any attention to my positive press. You know why? Then I don't have to react to my negative press. Because people do say negative things about me too. I've had people say things about me that are not kind. I've had people, well-meaning people, tell me that my faith is superficial. They say, you're just a motivational speaker. You're not true to this. Whatever it is, it's negative press. I don't accept my positive press because it's part of who I am. As a result, I don't have to react to my negative press because it's part of who I am. This morning, I heard this, and I'm going to share this with you. If you have never been criticized, it's because you have never done anything. 99% of the people in this world will go to their grave never having been criticized, but they never did anything. You're only criticized. The world will only come after you. The whole world will only try to poke holes in your armor if you don't do anything. You can be a spectator. But if you glow, give more than you have, leave more than you take, offer praise to everyone around. That's not hard. In your own building, when you go down now, maybe you can get out a little bit. Ask someone what they need. Krishnam is on the call. I'm not saying this to put him on the spot, but there are many times my dad would call and say, hey, thank you for your friends. He just drove over here on the day they lifted, and took me to all my doctor's appointments. That fills my heart as a son who's unable to do it. But it really makes my belief in humanity, because I can't do anything for him. I live half a world away. He's doing it because of the goodness of his heart. It's a good habit to have. Reach out, give more than you have, leave more than you take, offer praise to people around you, and don't care whose applause. It doesn't matter whether people clap for you or not. Last two, and then hopefully we'll get to our Q&A part. The expansion of your contribution. Learn to lighten other people's load. Learn to lighten other people's load. Many years ago, right now America is going through, W is whose applause matters. From David Jayaprakash, W is whose, don't worry, whose applause matters. Thank you. Give more than you have. And it's in the document as well, but thank you, Jayaprakash, for that. Don't worry, whose applause matters. Many years ago, right now America is being gripped by what you are hearing on your television as race riots and all of that other stuff. Don't believe everything you hear, and don't react to everything you see. A lot of it is, we have a saying in America, without a second opinion, some people would have no opinion at all. They have a second opinion so they can constantly change their opinion. And so we're going through that in America right now. There's a craziness that I've never seen before during my time. But I've lived here 35 years and I've seen some crazy stuff. But many years ago, when I was at the Ziegler organization, we created a program called Strategies for Success. And in Strategies for Success, we authored some of these components that I'm sharing with you now. This contribution. Make sure your contribution includes lightening another load, lightening your own load, strengthening another's load, and understanding some of the parameters of this load we carry. Well, one of the ladies who came to our program, her name was Gloria Hogue. Gloria Hogue was a nurse. Gloria Hogue was a nurse at a hospital here, the Tri-Cities Hospital, and the chaplain of that hospital brought her to our program because she was angry. She was African-American, which, she was black. And she, as an African-American lady, she had lived in the inner city, and she grew up with this anger that we see festering everywhere. And her anger may have been genuine. I don't know what her problems were. But she let her anger spill over into her profession. Which means she came, and this is her admission. She spoke in our office. She says, before I went through your program and understood contribution, if you were not black, I hated you. I had anger. Off-white didn't matter. You could have been Hispanic. You could have been Indian, brown, India. If you were not black, I thought you were prejudiced. Second, I was angry at you. And then I went through your program, and your program said, hey, you want to succeed in life. You want to have contribution in life. Carl Menninger from the Menninger Clinic in Topeka, Kansas said, if you feel the weight of the world on your shoulders, get involved in solving someone else's problem. So she decided she would do that. She went back and she did a simple thing. Every month she would put the names of people in a hat and she would draw the name and she would go pay their electric bill. Because she was a nurse, she found a lady who was Caucasian that is white. She found a lady that was Hispanic, that means of Mexican descent. And she found an African-American lady, a black lady, 3 different colors. Every morning, because she was a nurse, she found 3 different people in her neighborhood who were diabetic and required insulin and went and gave them their insulin shot. So 3 different colors doing something good. Every month, picking out someone's name from a hat and paying their electric bill. She says, my attitude began to change because I get great joy in helping others. It didn't happen that month. It didn't happen that week. But later on that year, she was recognized by then governor of Texas, who eventually became President George Bush, as one of the 1,000 points of light in the state of Texas and given a very high honor. What happens when you become someone who decides on contribution? We have a saying in my office and the other in our training room, and it's a saying by Mr. Ziegler. You can have everything in life you want if you just help enough other people get what they want. Make sure your contribution includes lightening your own load. Years ago, my friend Brian Flanagan used to have a paperweight on his desk. It said, angels fly because they take themselves lightly. Most people who know me, who are my friends on this call, on this webinar, know I like to laugh. I like to make other people laugh. It's just my nature. But it's also my coping mechanism of dealing with some of the dark things we deal with. I see horror when I travel around the world. I see brokenness when I go into the homes of the poor pastors in sub-Saharan Africa. I see disease. I mean, if you read my email, you'll wonder how I smile at all. But people think I have the solution. I don't have the solutions. At least I have a faculty of people I can guide them. But it begins from this concept, light and load. There's always a need you can meet. I had a saying years ago, it's attributed to me, but I'll give it to you. It says, you cannot be everything to everyone, but for someone out there, you are all they have. You cannot be everything to everyone. Maybe one day you'll get an email saying, hey, can you help with someone's tuition? Recently, I was in Jamtara on the border of Jharkhand and West Bengal. With the school shut down and all of that, one of the places that we work with, the school is the primary source of income for the other things they do. So we're sitting around, we're wondering what can we do? And on a plane ride back from after attending a funeral, a memorial service of Ravi Zacharias, Victor Abraham and I are sitting in the plane thinking to ourselves, this man changed the world in his time, because one day he was despondent on a bed of suicide and someone gave him words of hope. And he went on to change the world, literally. If for those of you who don't know him, just type in his name and you'll be blown away. In fact, I would recommend just go and watch his messages and forget the one I just gave you, because most of what I learned from him. But on the plane ride, we said, what can we do? Well, let's do something in his honor. It's not a lot of money. But you honor one person and you give someone else a scholarship, it's just passed through from you. But you cannot be everything to everyone. But for that poor kid on that border of Jharkhand and West Bengal, a couple of hundred rupees will buy their meals for a month. But do something for other people. And then lastly, the conclusion, the commemoration. Can his name be reappeared from Lenovo? Ravi Zacharias, R-A-V-I, Ravi, I guess. We call him Ravi, but Ravi, R-A-V-I, Zacharias, Z-A-C-H-A-R-I-A-S. It's not Z-E, it's Z-A. So there. All right. Okay. Anyhow, so the conclusion is, how do you win? I'm going to give you a quick formula, and then we'll probably save a good amount of time for Q&A. The W stands for wisdom. The I stands for innovation. And the N stands for networking. Okay? So wisdom is the need of the day. Innovation is the need of the hour. And networking is the need of the second. You have to change your habits. You have to be the instigator. You have to be a motivator. You have to be a maverick. You have to learn to do things you've never done before. Unusual things, uncomfortable things. In fact, the more uncomfortable they are, the more successful you'll be. And what do I mean by that? It's very easy to stay in the comfort zone. 97% are comfortable people. They're good, they're honest, they're tax-paying, they're law-abiding. 3% are effective zone people. These people do uncomfortable things. And uncomfortable things doesn't mean make sure they are moral. Okay, uncomfortable doesn't mean immoral. I'm talking about uncomfortable meaning going outside your comfort zone to do something you would have never done. The world is right now ripe with opportunity. And we have to look for opportunity in every problem, not problem in every opportunity. That's a skeptical nature. A skeptical nature looks for, a problem in every opportunity. Anytime something good happens, my mother who passed away when I wrote my first book, she, in Telugu, she would say, don't tell anybody, Chapakra, don't tell anybody because you'll have bad luck. I said, Amma, what are you talking about? She says, if you write a book and you tell everybody, you'll have bad luck because now, I said, Mom, if you write a book, you tell everybody about it. You don't tell anybody when you read a book. Nobody wants to know what you read. Everybody needs to read what you write. But my mom was that way. She was skeptical by nature. It was part of tradition. In her mind, just because something had been said for 100 years, you don't change it. So when she went out of the house, she actually, she would make sure the right foot crossed first and the left foot. I mean, she had all these traditions. And I'll never forget, and some of my friends have heard this story. When I came to the West, I said, I'm going to change my mom's habits if it kills me. So I started holding my mother. And my mother was, the typical traditional woman, sans makeup, hair always white. She would, if you put her arm around her, she wondered what people would say. And I'm her son. If a son doesn't embrace, the good Lord I follow also said this, woman, embrace your son, embrace your mother. I mean, the mother-son relationship was one of the most profound things humanity has ever experienced. So I started putting my hand around my mother, and she would just shirk away. She would try to duck. But I'm a big guy. My mother was a small lady, and eventually she just fit perfect. Now, whenever we went anywhere, my mom knew my hand would be around my mother, whether we were in the mall, wherever we went. And I remember one day we were walking in front of my uncle's house, my father's older brother. And my mother slunk away from me. I said, Amma, what are you doing? She says, oh, Pednana's house. I said, let him get his own mother. You're my mother. Why are we worried about him? And I suddenly realized, at a point, tradition takes over. And if you want winning habits, get rid of some of the traditions that have crippled you, that have cramped your style, and that have prevented you. Now, some traditions are noble. And I think sometimes in our desire, I'm guilty. In my desire to sometimes be too Western, I abdicated some of my responsibilities as a son, and I now am trying to reclaim some of those. Wisdom is the correct use of knowledge. What the world needs now is wisdom. And I'm telling you, we need wisdom not because the nation wants to know. We just need wisdom because it's the need of the hour. We need innovation, which is new ways to do something. A company in Dallas went bankrupt because they were in the meeting planning industry, the one industry that got completely decimated because of this pandemic. Guess what they decided to do? They decided to create customized hand sanitizing stations. Overnight, they created the logo. They put it up on their website. They created different size. Every office, even our office, when you walk in, there's a big sign, please use the sanitizer. We got big gallons over here. These guys created customized hand sanitizing stations that were very sleek, very futuristic. Within 1 week of them opening their business, they did $1 million on their website. It's just a hand sanitizing with a logo. Innovation is the need of the hour. Wisdom is the need of the day. Innovation is the need of the hour. Networking is the need of the minute. Make sure you're networking. So those were the comments I had. Foundation, definition, expansion, conclusion. We talked about celebration, clarification, contribution, and commemoration. Have put some wins. What I'd like to do is I'm going to look in the chat box, and then if you have any other questions, keep... okay. Sandeep said, sir, I'm not good at listening. I tried hard to be a good listener. So people say that or feel like I'm not humble and obedient. Okay. Hearing is involuntary. Listening is voluntary. So how do you do that? And if you didn't want your name, I won't give it out again. But for the person who asked the question on listening, when listening is an exercise, for example, if I were to go back to the start of this call, and some of us who were part of the hosts were on here, I wrote notes down as some of the things they said. The best way to become a good listener is no matter what you're doing, always have, and I carry an iPad with me, I can write pretty quick on it, but there's something for me that is a habit that has never left me. When I go and sit with my mentors, wherever I sit, the other day, Dr. Pradeep Philip was speaking on a conference, Icon Talks or something like that. I went on, I took some notes. Here's the beauty. John Maxwell put it this way. He says, when you tell someone a story, they say you care. When you tell someone a story that matters to them, they know you care about them. When you tell their story to someone else, they know that you're real. So what I do is anytime I take notes from somebody, I always send it back by WhatsApp or by text, saying, hey, when you said this, it really motivated me. It will cement the relationship, but it will make you a better listener. So do it this way. Dr. Adrian Rogers put it this way. Always learn everything in 3 bites. When you hear something, first ask yourself, what are they saying? Second, ask yourself, what are they saying to me? And third, how would I say it to someone else? That forces you to be a better listener. Humility has got nothing to do with listening. Humanity can listen 6 times faster than anybody can speak if you're compelling. So don't buy into this. When I first came to America, they said Indians talk too fast. That had nothing to do with it. If you're a compelling speaker, people will listen no matter how fast you speak because they want to. So don't tie humility into listening, or that's just if they're not a compelling speaker and you're not paying attention, that has nothing to do with you being arrogant. It's just that they're not compelling. As a speaker, I'm aware of this. I know a lot of people zone out. I don't think that they're being arrogant. I actually put the onus on myself as not being compelling. But the best way to listen is ask yourself, how would you say it? What are they saying? What are they saying to you? And how would you say it to someone else? So hopefully that helped. How do I manage to sustain the good habits that I'm trying to inculcate, somehow getting lost in? Okay, let me just pull up the rest of it. Okay. How do I manage to sustain the good habits that I'm trying to inculcate, somehow getting lost in the middle, and it's frustrating? Yeah, the question is a very good question because it deals, and I'll come back to some of the others. The question of habits. See, motivation gets you going, but habit gets you there. You make motivation a habit, you'll get there quicker and have more fun. By the same token, today you've heard positive information and your frustration may be, hey, tomorrow what happens? I haven't heard this positive input, so tomorrow some other fellow will come and dump negativity on me. What you're saying is motivation is not permanent. Well, neither is bathing or eating. But if we do both on a regular basis, we'll smell better and live longer. So in order to have habits that have longevity, you have to make motivation and discipline a habit. This is the hard part. For example, Sybil Stanton said, discipline is not on your back needling you with imperatives. It's at your side encouraging you with incentives. So I have a discipline. I wake up at 4:30 in the morning, no matter where in the world I am. I'll read for an hour. I may go back to bed. That's a luxury. I own my own company. But I will always wake up at 4:30 in the morning, between 4 and 4:30 in the morning, and do 1 hour of input for myself. That's my time. That's when I get ready for the world. That's when I get ready for talks. That's when I get ready to write. That's when I get ready to research. That's when I do my Bible study, whatever it is. That's non-negotiable. You will only be effective in your habits if you are a time miser. If you let other people row your boat, they're going to take it to where they want to go, not to where you want to go. So remember, it's okay to say no, N-O, to some people who mean well, if it encroaches on your ability to be better, on your discipline. Pastor Sam Kamalesan, the amazing, amazing preacher from India who rocked the world, and many call him the most amazing preacher ever. Pastor Sam Kamalesan, I was in his house in California. He had a habit. At 9 o'clock, he would get up and he would leave the room. He says, he would look at you and he says, I have to go and get myself some rest so tomorrow I can get up and be ready to serve. The house will lock automatically, so you feel free to enjoy, but on your way, just close the door, and he would leave the room. And he's revered as one of the most brilliant. But 9 o'clock, out. Mr. Ziegler was the same way. Most people I know who are fascinating are people who had these habits, but the habits were non-negotiable, even at the cost of not being popular. So, all right. Sharon, you want to take over and read me some of the questions so that I can?
So we have some other questions here.
Okay.
So, how can we be sure when our dreams and plans are shattered? What is the significant thing for that at this time?
Okay. What are some of the things we can do in our dreams? And first thing, remember, in fact, I'll give you a story. This will help. Fred Smith, who was the mentor for John Maxwell. In fact, I'd recommend all of you on this call, if you can, go get John Maxwell's book, Developing the Leader Within You. In fact, I just went and got 25 years later, I ordered a copy of myself electronically again because I'd worn out the original copy, Developing the Leader Within You. It's a workbook style. But John Maxwell had a mentor by the name of Fred Smith, and Maxwell tells the story. Fred Smith had an office, and in the office, he had a separate office that was empty. It had a desk, it had a phone, it had a secretary, but nobody occupied it. And that office was for people whose dreams had shattered. That office was for people whose dreams had failed. And he tells the story of a mental man who, when two companies merged, this man thought he was going to be the CEO of the combined company. Instead, they made the other guy the CEO, and this guy lost his job. Fred Smith said, "Come on to my office. I have an office for you." So this guy had to gather up his whole belongings. His dreams are now shattered. He went to Fred Smith's office and occupied the office there. Very interesting story, because when that guy walked into the room, here's the sign he saw on the back. Your dreams just failed. You didn't. Failure throughout the history of humanity has been an event. You can fail at something. You cannot fail as someone. God loves you too much. Within created order, some will win, some will lose. But you can fail at things. You cannot fail as someone. Failure is an event. It can never be a person. By the same token, when people say no to you, NO, they are refusing your skill. Nobody on God's green earth has the ability to reject your will. Norman Vincent Peale was rejected 17 times for his best-selling book, The Power of Positive Thinking. And he took the manuscript and threw it in a dustbin. And he said, "I'm done with this. I'm done with rejection." He forbade his wife to even touch the dustbin, touch the manuscript. She so believed in her husband's work, so she took the whole dustbin. She didn't touch the manuscript. She took the whole dustbin and put it in a brown paper bag and took it to publisher number 18, and history was made. The Power of Positive Thinking, 42 languages, 40 plus million copies, changed the world. You are, see, the farmer who plants a little more seed, the student who studies just a little more. Perseverance is not quitting. Perseverance is learning something. See, you can fail, you can fall down. You can either let your past beat you or you can let it teach you. Hopefully those illustrations helped.
Yeah, it did. Thank you. So
Thanks, Daniel. Appreciate it. Go ahead.
So this is a spiritual one. We are managing on our own on this planet. Can we say that God left us here to do it on our own? So what is the significance of believing in the supernatural?
Well, there's a difference between the natural and the supernatural, and it's in the question itself. But interestingly enough, Winston Churchill once met a young man who came up to him and said, "Mr. Churchill, I just want to let you know that I'm a self-made man." And Churchill said, "Sir, you have just relieved God of an amazing responsibility. The odds of us doing it on our own are but zero. But God gave us free will. And the free will, I want to give you the chronology of this belief. The reason we've been given free will is love, by its nature, is one of the most profound things that God can give to his creation. By the same token, if God gave a love to us that was coerced, saying that I will only love you if you loved me back, that is a fallacy. Anybody who has fallen in love in an earthly sense will tell you that. Coerced love is no love at all. Traditional marriages that were coerced and manufactured never really had that love. Some people decided to fall in love a little later. But coerced love is a fallacy. So God, who creates this universe, gives us the ability to reject him. That's the supernatural attribute. Now, depending on your faith system, a Judeo-Christian worldview believes that God existed before time, sent his son to occupy time so that humanity would understand, and the son's sacrifice allowed a spirit to leave till redemption has come. That's the Judeo-Christian belief. In a Hindu worldview, the mindset is on karma, the mindset is on moksha, and it's on the works you do. In an Islamic mindset, it is a required set of rituals. In a Buddhist mindset, it is renunciation. But all of your mindsets have one attribute in common. that God is somewhere out there and we are trying to reach him with our work. The difference, they say, Peter Kreeft says, that you have to ask yourself, is the supernatural in this world desiring you to reach him? Or is he big enough that he wants to reach you? See, I believe that God is needed in this world, not because he wants me to do something. He created the world. What could he want me to do? The fact that he needs me to do it for him is humbling. So I don't believe that you can have success without the spiritual quotient. Someone else asked this. Man is tridimensional by nature. We are mental, physical, and spiritual. Our mental acumen gives us the ability to have a skill to make a living. Our physical attributes allow us to develop the will that allows us to shape a life. But our spiritual components plug the hole in our soul. That's why when I started, I said, loving is easy, but if you learn to love through someone else's eyes. See, I love my bride through the eyes of God who forgives. And because I love her through his eyes, I don't see a woman who's hurt and hurting. I see someone who's redeemed and complete. So I don't believe you can have success, but that's just me. Again, like I said, I may be in error, but I do believe that the spiritual quotient of success is the most profound, especially in times of doubt, because I do not understand how people can have failure or fallacies in this world if they did not have a God to lean on.
Right. Yeah. We have a couple of questions on embracing change without hesitation or fear of uncertainty.
Repeat that, Sharon.
Yeah. On embracing change without hesitation or overcoming fear of uncertainty.
Yeah, see, Eric Hoffer, a change agent, put it this way. He said, in times of change, it is the learners who will inherit the earth, while the learned will find themselves beautifully equipped for a world that no longer exists. What he meant by that simply is, uncertainty is going to happen. There are three things that will happen every day. One are the givens. So I'm right now in the US. We have folks from Kenya. We have folks from Israel. Each country, based on its constitutionality as a republic or a democracy, would have its own givens as to how to deal with pandemics, how to deal with infrastructure, how to deal with defense. So when you wake up in India, your rules are set. When I wake up in America, my rules are set. When I wake up in Kenya, my rules are set. These are givens. Then there's uncontrollable, act of nature, wrath of God, 9/11, earthquakes, tsunami, locusts, hurricane, typhoon. These are uncontrollables. Even the pandemic, it's an uncontrollable. So you and I cannot do anything about the givens. You and I can only learn to adjust to the uncontrollables. But there's a third component in change, and that is the negotiable. So while we cannot fully anticipate and fully overcome every change that is put in front of us, having a preparedness at least allows us to navigate change. You will not win every time, but it is desirous to make sure you have some kind of a plan. So when this started, the first thing I did was, and I'll give you a classic example. When this first started, I'm a speaker by nature, which means 100% of my earning is if I'm somewhere speaking, and that was canceled. All the public events were canceled. I do a fair amount of video anyway, but I posted something. I said, in times of doubt, make sure that you're not settling for enthusiastic amateurs. Make sure you're still holding out for experienced professionals. Because I consider myself an experienced professional. So people started reaching out to me. And they said, how are you going to adjust? How are you going to make this? Well, the government had all these structures. And one of the things was that where our building is located in a place which was in lockdown. We are not allowed to travel. But my studio, all my equipment is in the office. I tried to take it to the house. I didn't get bandwidth on my internet. I have better bandwidth here. So what do? How do you negotiate around this? I called one of the companies I work with that has been classified an essential services company. I took a very low pay to be classified an employee by them for 3 months, which means during those 3 months, I said, I'll do whatever you want. And I was willing to. I would go mop their floor if I needed to. But why did I need that? I needed that because I had to be classified an essential employee to be able to leave my house. All you can do in this world is negotiate. So you have to find. Now, two things you have to understand. When you're navigating change and uncertainty and you're willing to negotiate, remember this. You want to feed your family or you want to feed your ego?
Thank you so much. So, Abe Banu Venkat has asked us how to work on determination and building willpower.
How to work on determination and building willpower. One of the books I'd recommend you read is a book called, in fact, one of the things I'll do is I have a document. I don't know if I already sent it, but if Tychicus doesn't have it, I'll send it to him. But it's a 6-page document which has a lot of my quotes in it, but it has a bibliography at the back, which all the websites I recommend and books I recommend you read. One of the books is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Viktor, Viktor Frankl, Frankl, but Man's Search for Meaning. He was a prisoner of war during the German occupation, and he was a Jewish gentleman, so he was imprisoned in some of the death camps. But Frankl writes in that the only way he could have determination to survive and uncertainty was to have pride. So he says those that sacrificed pride, which means that they did not clean their prison uniforms or didn't clean their prison area, they succumbed to debauchery and they succumbed to the lowest common denominator. He says those that had pride, washed their uniforms or swept away and didn't participate in anything, somehow were able to overcome. He came out of prison and he wrote this book, Man's Search for Meaning, in which he coined the term logotherapy. Logos is word, therapy is, of course, therapeutic. But the power of words, the way you get determined is what we call the future skill attitude. So I'm going to give you a simple one, but I recommend you read the book. It has more ideas. I'll give you one in relationships. So when we got married, I was chasing money and my wife was having a hard time. And, our marriage was quite rocky for the first 6 years. And everything was excuse-based. I'm doing this for you and all this nonsense. Well, when someone gave me the power of logotherapy, Anila and I both did this. We wrote down on an index card, what are the 5 characteristics we want in the other person? She had more things on her list, but we settled on 5. I could have 5. My wife's almost perfect, so finding 5 things was hard. But I was surprised. The first thing she wrote on there was, I want someone who's sober. This was back in the days when we began, and yes, I did drink. I'm not proud of it. But I never realized that it was a bother to her. But she wrote down 5 words on there. I carried those 5 words in my wallet, and I would look at it morning, noon, and night. And something miraculous happens, logotherapy. You become that kind of person. The best way to be determined, if you want a skill of communication, you want a skill of listening, you want a skill of humor, you want a skill of whatever it is, write those words down, stand in front of a mirror, and claim them. In fact, the Ziglar Corporation has a list. Type in Ziglar affirmation cards, Ziglar affirmation card, and you may be able to find a PDF online that's free. It says I, and just put in your name, and it has a list of qualities. Stand in front of the mirror and read that morning and night, and do that for 21 days, and trust me, you'll start seeing some change.
Thank you. Yeah, Sushmita has asked us if there are any signals to watch out for where we have to say no in a situation.
Is there any?
Are there any signals to watch out for when you want to say no in a situation?
Yeah, the signal is, remember this, you cannot make a good deal with a bad person. You may have the right intention, but you always have to ask yourself, is there an underlying motive? So here's the signal. The number one signal is when I'm talking to someone and I ask them a question, if they're more interested in telling me everything they're doing and less interested in knowing what I need, I zone out. I will write it on a sheet of paper. The other day I was talking to a person on the phone, and they literally talked for 12 minutes, and they had called me asking me if I'd mentor them. He called me and asked me if I'd mentor them, and they talked for 12 minutes as to why they were the right candidate for mentoring. What they were saying is, hey, I want to walk alongside you. That's fine. They can be a companion. But I'm very, very, for me, it always, it's the more questions you ask, the better qualified you'll be. So for me, I seek to do business. I seek to be partners with. I love people who are inquisitive. I don't like people who are narrative.
All right.
Right.
We have another question. Yashun says, what will anyone achieve through deceptive measures or manipulation? Love is unconditional, but what if conditions are set in relationships?
Well, the question is two-part, but here's the thing. If you motivate somebody so that you would look good, that is manipulation. And you have to motivate them so they'll look good. The principle is always this. The principle is do for others as you would want done unto yourself. That's the golden rule. Platinum rule is do unto others as you would like done unto them, not as you would like done unto you. And the cubic zirconia rule is do unto others as the policies and procedures dictate and do not deviate. The only one that works is the golden rule. And the golden rule sometimes has no reward, and you may not see it on this side. You know, we run this race not because we are trying to find our place, but we're running this race because we've been given the grace. And ultimately, at the end of the day, people always ask me, how do I know that I've had a good day? Regardless of whether I win or lose, if I put my head on the pillow at night and I fall right asleep, I know I've given it my all. If I stay awake all night wondering what else could I've done, then I'm rationalizing. See, logic and reason are the two things that are important for existence, but logic and emotion are parallel lines. We claim to be logical, but we are the most emotional of all species. Sometimes you should stop thinking and start feeling.
We'll actually.
Someone else. Yeah, go ahead, Sharon.
If anybody wants to ask questions directly, they'll be able to raise their hands and talk. So if anybody wants to.
Yeah, and also, I think on the document we sent you, I think info email is there, info@, Skylife Success. And you can send me an email and we'll try to answer all of them as best as we can. So yeah, don't hesitate to reach out. There was another question on asking no.
Yeah, how to convey no without showing emotions positively?
Okay. Here's the thing. There are different ways to say no. In sales, for example, when someone says, can you do this? I said, yes, I can. But in order to make a deal, I want to make sure I'm not making a bad deal and violating the relationship and the integrity we have had with other clients who already have accepted this product or service in the same way. What I'm looking for is consistency. Now, I'm a word merchant or known to it, so I can be diplomatic even in saying no. But sometimes, recently I had a call from a client, I accepted, and then I went online and they had some questionable background. So I called them back and I said, hey, based on some of the data that we have just received, I don't think we're going to be a perfect fit. Now, here's the thing. Are you going to be okay not accepting money that could be costly in the short term, by the same token, as a result of that, having a good conscience so that you can survive in the long term? That's the key. The key is you can make a deal with anybody and you can say yes or no, and that dance is fine. But the diplomacy of yes or no is actually contingent on your conscience. There are times in my career where I said yes to something only to regret it later, not because they were bad people. Not everything is my skill set. There are a lot of things I shouldn't be doing, but ego gets in the way. So ask yourself, when you're saying no, are you saying no for the right conscience reasons? Or are you saying no for ego reasons, saying, hey, I don't want to do business with you, or if I did business with you, it would demean me. But learn to be diplomatic. It's okay. You cannot be everything to everyone. All right?
David Jayaprakash has a question.
Sorry? Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah, actually, I just typed it. So I find it very difficult to concentrate and focus on reading a book completely. So what happens is I end up half reading it and not getting the full information out of it. So how do I keep the focus and complete a book? Any tips on that?
Yeah, read better books. No, I'm kidding.
I just started with Ravi Zakray's Cries of the Heart, right? So, when I couldn't even complete, I just read one chapter of it, the first chapter, and then that's it. I'm not able to.
Yeah, there are two things. Ravi's intellectual stimulation is in a different league. You know, some people say that maybe he was too erudite, but I really do believe his communication was ordained for a different reason. You know, there was a time in global Christianity where people said we're trying to keep it simple, and all we did was got a bunch of simple people. Along comes this person with such scholarly wisdom and such profound vocabulary that he mesmerizes people, saying that, you know what, this can be a thinking man's religion as well. It can be a thinking man's faith as well. So don't his vernacular is very powerful. So before you go diving into the deep end of the pool, maybe you do it as an also. Here's how I read. I'm also a person who cannot keep my concentration. But over the last 25 years, I have read at least one book a week on average. But it's on average, which means I've never completely read any book in the last 25 years at one sitting. I, at any given time, have 5 books open. And I will open to that which fascinates me. So if I'm reading Ravi and after a page or two it gets heavy, I may go on to something lighter and come back and visit Ravi a little bit later. But the way in which I keep my concentration is the same thing I shared with you earlier. When I first read it on my iPad, I will say, what is the author trying to say to me? If I'm reading it in a book, I will say, what is the author saying? Then I will underline or I will highlight the parts where I say, the author is here speaking directly to me. So first, what is the author saying? Second, what is he saying to me? Then I would underline or retype how I have internalized it. So my concentration technique is first, I tell people when you internalize something and personalize it, it becomes easy to vocalize. So I always read because I have to teach. So first I ask, what is the author saying? Second, I ask, what is the author saying to me? Third, how would I say it? So first, maybe I'll read it. Second, I'll highlight it. And third, I'll underline or rewrite it. But because like you, I cannot focus on one thing at a time, at any given time, I'm reading 3 books. So one of them will be hard copy next to my chair. One will be on an iPad. One will be on my phone. And then I can show, I mean, hopefully it'll pull up, but I have a small notes page here, which, I mean, they just, every day I'll just add something.
Okay.
So they just, every day I'll add something, notes on there. But you have to physically get involved in highlighting and all of that. So I mean, I carry hard copy. I have a hard copy of my Bible here. I have this, I have highlighters here. Every desk in my house, every place where I sit will have 3 things. We'll have a pen, we'll have a pencil, and we'll have a highlighter.
Okay.
Even in my car, in case I'm listening to something, I pull off at the gas station if it's important. Here's the thing. If it's important to you, make sure it's immediately important to you. Don't wait till you get to your destination because you'll never remember it.
Got it.
Hopefully that helped, David.
Yes. Thank you.
All right, from Roy.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Sure.
Question for today.
How are we doing on time, Sharon?
Yeah, we just have the last question and then we're done.
Okay. And the last question is?
Yeah, Sudhir has asked us how to avoid the habit of pleasing others. So if you do that not to hurt other people and then turns out it's bad for you.
Well, one of the things that Henry Kissinger was a diplomat. He was Secretary of the State, and he says, the art of diplomacy is learning to stand on someone's toes without them knowing you're hurting them. So there's a delicate balance there. Don't be a yes man. By the same token, pleasing other people for the sake of being liked is a personality trait. Sometimes we do it because society demands that, our families demand that. But with maturity, there'll come a point where you have to learn how to say no, but do it diplomatically. My mentor, Zig Ziglar, when people would ask him to do something, and if we were at a dinner table and it was 9 o'clock, he would look at me and he would say, Krish, what's on schedule for tomorrow? And I'd say, sir, well, at 8 o'clock, you have to get up and do this with 8:30. So then he would look at the crowd and he would say, Well, my assistant has pretty much, he controls my schedule, so I think I'll excuse myself. What he would do is he would make a third person more important in the decision making. The reason I give that illustration is when I'm with my wife and we go somewhere and someone says, stay a little longer, I always use her by simply saying, no. I think, years ago we made a decision that we would spend a little quality time after an event by just sitting and talking about the day. So we're going to go away and do that, or whatever it is. There's more power in numbers. So create a third party of some kind that can help you say no in a more effective way. Here's the other thing. Being liked to win a popularity contest will never work because people have other problems too. By the same token, let me tell you this. I grew up in the southern part of India and I went to school in the northern part of India. But when I got to Delhi, people would always say in Hindi, and I jokingly now say after 35 years, I haven't found these people. So don't do things because someone will think you're bad. I have not found these people who think you're bad. They've got enough problems finding their own problems. So don't worry about other people. People do not have the time to worry about you. Quit worrying about them.
Thank you so much, Mr. Krish. We're done for today. We're really pleased to have you as the speaker. Thank you so much for the talk.